Okay, so we're taking a look at this organelles lab that you should have already submitted. Um, and you had time from last class to do this. Remember, you were supposed to go ahead and take a look at this website. If that didn't work, you had the second website. And what you were supposed to do was you needed to look at you were making a animal cell that's a eukaryotic cell and building it together to see all the organelles or structures that would belong in an animal cell that's eukaryotic. And then after that, you were building a eukaryotic plant cell. So you were putting together a plant cell and seeing all the organelles that would be inside of a plant cell. And then afterwards, you had to complete a Venn diagram. So you needed to do that the website and take a look at the organelles and look at the descriptions in the website and match them up to the descriptions that were here in the table. Figure out what the name of the organelle is, add the picture that if it was missing, and then at the end tell if it was in a plant cell or an animal cell. And you needed to keep this last column empty so that we could go over it together. So we're going to take a look at this section, the memory clue, to help us remember what the functions of each organelle is. So if we take a look at a cell and think about it having all these different organelles or parts to it that help to make up the cell and help the cell, we can think of a cell kind of like a city, let's say like Newark. The city is made up of different parts or pieces, let's say like inside the city, there's a police department, there's a fire department, there are grocery stores, there's schools, there's places of worship, there's hospitals. All of these parts make up the city. So we can think of it just kind of like these organelles. All these organelles make up the cell. So let's take a look at the first one, the cell membrane. Not only is it a boundary between the cell and the environment, but it controls what goes into the cell and what goes out of the cell. So if the cell was like a city, what would be the cell membrane like in the city? Since it controls what moves in and out of the cell, we can think of it kind of like an airport. In order to get onto a plane to leave the city or to get into our city, people would need to get on the plane and make sure that they have their identification on them, like passport, or maybe and also a boarding ticket. So you can't just get onto the plane to leave the city or to come into the city. You need special things to get onto the plane. And that's what the cell membrane does. It figures out what can leave and what can enter. All right, the cell wall, it's only in plants. It's a hard layer outside of the cell and it's there for support and protection. So what in the city is there for support and protection? So we can think of the police department, and they're there to help us or to support us and protect us. All right, the next one, the cytoskeleton, it moves structures inside the cell, helps the cell to divide. So what would that be like in the city? And let's focus on, let's say, moving structures, moving things in the city. Well, we can think of any type of public transportation um, that can help move people around. And trucks also and cars that can move not just people, but also like if it's trucks, it could be like products or goods. Let's take a look at organelles that store, clean up, or break things down. So the vacuole stores substances, can also break down cell waste, but for the plant cells, they have one large vacuole, and the animal cells, they'll have lots of these small vacuoles. So what in a city would, let's focus on storing things. What in the city stores things? And we actually have one right by our school. It's about a block away. So we can think of, let's say, storage units. Those are those big buildings, and they have like different size rooms where people can rent out. If they have too many items, they don't have enough room or space in their homes, they can rent out a storage unit so that they can have this extra space to store their items. All right, lysosomes, they have enzymes, and we've talked about enzymes. They are proteins that help speed up chemical reactions. So lysosomes, they digest things, they break them down. Things like food damaged things, waste, old organelles, microbes, which are like bacteria. What in the city would break things down, things that are old or damaged or waste? Well, we can think of like our sanitation workers. Okay, these are the people who collect the garbage, maybe the recycling, and then they transport that garbage or recycling to a facility that can break it down. Okay, let's take a look at organelles that capture and release energy. So we've talked about the chloroplast before. It'll take things like sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water and put those together to make sugars for the plant and also releases oxygen in a process called photosynthesis. So let's focus on the light part. What in the city would take in or use the light? Well, we can think of solar panels, and you might see solar panels on the roofs of houses and apartments or companies and buildings. You might see them also in like parking lots of specific companies. They'll collect the sun's energy so that it can provide energy for that home or building. All right, the mitochondria is in both plant and animal eukaryotic cells. They break down the sugar so that they can get ATP, which is energy from the sugars, in a process called cellular respiration. So, what in the city can help to provide energy? Well, we can take a look at power plants. Power plants help to um, get that energy. And we can also see, I'm sure you've seen this, some of the adults in your home might pay a company called PSENG, and that company helps to get that energy into the homes or apartments or like buildings and schools. All right. Now let's take a look at organelles that build proteins. So we have the nucleus. It's important because it stores important information called DNA and also gives instructions to making proteins or synthesizing proteins. Synthesize just means to make. And they also control the cell. So what in the city would control, maybe what or who would have a lot of control over the city? Well, we can think of the mayor. The mayor is the person who makes really important decisions for the city. You can also think of like city hall. That's where maybe important records or documents need to be at. And it's the mayor and the city hall. You can think of those places as they help to control the city. All right, now that the information from the nucleus, the information to make those proteins, um, the ribosomes will take that information or their instructions to actually make that proteins. All right, so what would be in a city that I know it says makes proteins, but let's think of like what in the city makes things. Makes things. You can think of like let's say factories. Factories make things. Now, another organelle in our cells makes proteins, but they also make lipids that could be part of the cell membrane or other parts of the cell. So when I think of lipids and proteins or those macromolecules, we know that we have them in our body and we make them in our body, but we can also get them from our foods. So what in the city can make these these things like lipids and proteins like that we can find in our food? Well, we can think of, let's say, restaurants or grocery stores or supermarkets. Okay, we can get food from there. All right, now that the lipids and the proteins are made, then they need to be sorted out and even packaged. So the Golgi apparatus does that. So what in the city would sort through things and package them up? We can think of a post office, because those workers in the post office will have to sort through the mail, organize it, maybe package up certain things that you want to send out. And once those lipids and proteins are changed or sorted, they're packaged, now they might need to be sent out to another part of the cell or a different cell completely. And that's what the vesicle does. So what or who in the city will actually send out things? So if we're taking a look at the post office, we can take a look at whoever the male man or woman is. Their job is to actually go out and send out, let's say, the mail and deliver it. All right, so now that you have that done, it's important to take a look at these memory clues to help you remember what the functions of these organelles are. And this can be used as your study guide to help you know what organelles do and where which cells they're in. Are they in eukaryotic plant cells or are they in eukaryotic animal cells? At the end of the website, after you've built those cells to see what organelles are in those cells, you should have seen a Venn diagram. And it's important to see, like I said, some organelles are in both, but some are in plant and some are only in animal cells. So remember that lysosomes are only found in animal cells and vacuoles are found in both, but many small vacuoles are only in animal cells. And plant cells, they have a chloroplast, they have cell wall, and they have vacuole, but it's one large vacuole. All right, so make sure you use this to help you remember what the function is.